Welcome to Adventures in Coffee, a podcast by Caffeine magazine sponsored by Oatly.
In this second series, we're taking you on a journey to understand what's in your daily cup of coffee.
Now, the thing is, Scott, we're all trying to understand where our food and drink comes from these days. So we've made this podcast to shake the beans of the coffee world. And I'm just going to copy you with the puns and say peek behind the porterfilter.
Well done, Jools.
Thanks.
I am Scott Bentley. I am the founder of Caffeine magazine.
And I'm Jools Walker. Everyone knows by now that I'm a very proud East Londoner. But of course, I am your very everyday coffee lover.
Now, in today's episode, we're taking you on a whistle-stop tour of pods.
Maybe, dear listener, you're a bit like me. You know, you've got Christmases and birthdays swinging around. And, you know, I'm literally wondering, should I just get them a pod machine?
Just no, don't do it. There are so many reasons not to buy someone a pod machine.
And Scott, the thing is, this is exactly why we are making this episode, because I haven't quite made my mind up yet. And there is the element of me actually really wanting to prove you wrong for once in one of these episodes as well. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at pods, and we're going to be looking at them from every single possible angle that we can.
Absolutely. So we're going to look at, are they actually good value for money?
How easy are they to use compared to an espresso machine?
We're going to look at the environmental impact.
And we're going to be looking at how they actually compare in flavour to an actual espresso.
But before we get to all of that, here's just a quick word from our sponsor.
And this is a sustainability hack brought to you by Oatly.
Now, Jools, you've got a fair amount of appliances in your kitchen. You know, your boyfriend's a professional chef.
Uh-huh.
Have you got one of those ultra-modern poppity pings?
A what, sorry?
Poppity ping. You know, the thing that goes bing.
Oh, you mean a microwave?
That's the one. Now, our very good friends at Oatly have shared with us another sustainability hack, and that is cooking in a microwave is the most energy efficient way to cook. In fact, it can use up to 80% less energy than a conventional oven.
Oh, why is that?
The microwave heats up the food directly rather than the air around it.
Oh, you know what, Scott? I've actually heard that you could heat up all sorts of things in the microwave, you know, like maybe drying small items of clothing in it.
That kind of reminds me of my time as a student. Sometimes it's very cold in those student houses, and you're getting up in the morning, and there's nothing like a nice toasty pair of pants.
Oh, God, Scott, I have to ask. Did you live in a shared house while you were at uni?
Of course, I was a student.
I'm going to keep everything crossed that those were clean pants that you were putting in the microwave.
I reiterate my first point. I was a student.
Moving swiftly on, you shouldn't forget to turn off the microwave at the plug after you've used it, because to be honest, nobody really uses them as a clock these days anyway.
And that is another sustainability hack by our friends at Oatly. Okay, Jools, let's kick this off. Now, I want to get one thing off my chest first. In my view, these capsule machines, essentially, they're trying to dupe the public into thinking that you're getting an espresso. First off, I mean, just look at the leading manufacturer. All they've done is put an N on the front of that word. They're kind of saying to everyone, hey guys, it's like espresso. So
clever marketing, though.
Really clever marketing. The other thing is, whenever you see these things, they always talk about crema. The technology in these things is basically all built around trying to produce an experience which feels as close to espresso as possible. And the thing is, it's not espresso.
See, Scott, I'm going to be a bit naughty here, because you're very much
contrary by any chance there, Jools. You're going to be a little contrary.
Shut up. But I don't think your comparison that you're doing is particularly fair, because the coffee that you would get in a pod is not the same coffee that you would get or be using in your espresso machine. So it's not really a like-for-like comparison.
Yes, I'll give you that. But I don't know what the difference in the taste of that is. That would be something I'm interested in finding out. And the good news is, James, our producer, went off to try and find that out.
Hey peeps. Yeah, so essentially the question is, if you have the same beans, right, in a pod machine and an espresso machine, how different is the coffee going to be? To stop you two from bickering so much, I said, I'm going to put this to the test.
But Dad!
I'll put it on myself. So on a rainy day, I hopped on the tube and went down to an old fire station down in Brixton, back in the day when horses pulled, water tanks along to kind of douse out fires. And it's there that Volcano and Assembly Roasters have one of their roasting sites. And it was here that I met the taste tester.
My name is Nathan McCarley-O'Neill. I'm currently the Assistant Food and Beverage Director for Claridge Hotel in London.
How many years have you been in the gastronomy game?
Oh, wow. I started when I was 16, probably going on just above 15 years right now.
Ooh, Claridge's. We brought out the big guns.
James, I've got to say, Scott and I, we don't know anything at all about how this experiment went because you've stayed incredibly tight-lipped about this whole thing. But what I want to know, was Nathan actually going to be unbiased with this?
Great question, Jools. And you know what? I also had that fear because if, Nathan turned out to be a snob like Scott, then this whole thing would have been a waste of time. But I actually began to relax a little bit when Michael Cleland, he's one of the co-founders of Assembly, he was helping out, pulling the shots. At one point, I was asking him these technical details. What are our measurements going in and out on the espresso?
Doing about 17 grams here we're going to pull 34 gram out.
So I went over to Nathan, right, our taste tester from Claridge's, and I asked him this. Does that mean anything to you?
Absolutely nothing whatsoever, no.
Okay, wasn't expecting that to be the answer, but there you go.
He's a funny guy, right? He sits in this kind of in-between space where he has an extraordinary palate and knows great coffee, but he doesn't have really much of an idea how to make good coffee.
I actually am probably the most underqualified with the most overqualified equipment possible.
All the gear and no idea.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Like no idea how to do grind size, no idea how to actually make pour over, but I have all the equipment that makes it look like I do. So
A bit like Scott, no?
See, I wasn't going to say that, but still.
And as an aside, actually, at Claridge's, imagine this. If you go to, one of their suites and you wake up one morning and you say, I really fancy a red pod from a certain manufacturer, they will procure it. If you say, I want, a Gesha coffee from this particular farmer, they will probably try and procure it for you. But which basically means, like, for him, he doesn't really have a strong opinion on what is correct coffee. It's just more what is the flavor. To me, it gave me confidence that he's going to be like the right unbiased person for the job.
Okay, this all sounds very good, actually. Let's get into the weeds. How's all this set up?
So basically, very simple. Same coffee. Nathan didn't know what coffee it was. It's the same coffee that was going to be in the pod and the same coffee that was going to be made as an espresso.
Yeah, I mean, there's no contest here. Nathan, if he understands flavour, which he obviously does, I mean, he's built a career here, he's in one of the most prestigious hotels in London, he's not going to be able to taste a watery old pod machine coffee, no matter how, what the quality of the beans are, to a really thick and unctuous, super gorgeous espresso. I mean, it's deal done. Let's just go on to the next bit of this show. I mean, we're done here already. Just clip on.
Okay, Scott, hold your horses. Okay, quite literally, we're in the stables and you need to hold your horses.
How long have you been waiting to do that joke?
It just came to me. It just came to me. So, both coffees are down in front of him. He's not tasting them yet. He's looking at them and smelling them.
color is very different. The crema on the pod, very, very, very light.
Then he looked at the espresso coffee.
Definitely a little bit darker, less crema, and a much nicer shine. On the nose, the pod is quite interesting. Sort of smells like something, but then also not very much of anything as well at the same time. Whereas the espresso is completely different. The espresso, you've got very, very clean flavors, very nuanced flavors, some fruit in there as well.
Well, so we're done. I mean, he's already said very light, very wishy-washy.
No.
It's like, comes from the espresso machine,
Scott,
thick, gorgeous. I'm done.
No. Take a seat. Pipe down. This isn't. We're not done. He hasn't even tasted the coffee yet, so just hold your horses.
And then on the palate.
Here's him tasting the pod.
So the pod actually is quite approachable. Very, very, very easy drinking, but it does coat the palate quite nicely.
Yeah.
Quite a pleasant experience.
Okay.
No?
Yeah. Fun.
Now here's the espresso.
So instantly the difference with it is most certainly on the palate, you've got a lot higher acidity, which is quite nice. You've got a lot more structure from the actual espresso. Specific on like the back palate, you can taste kind of almost like the freshness within the coffee. Also, there's a lot of fruit notes coming through that where it's like a lot of berries and just very, 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 very easy to drink. Both of them are actually quite enjoyable, which is surprising, you know.
Okay, let me just jump on this very quickly. Both are actually quite enjoyable. So that kind of sounds like a tie to me.
It does not sound like a tie.
Let me know. Let me be like you, Scott. I'm just going to jump in early and grasp on everything and just be like, we're done. Maybe we could just leave it at this point.
Okay, hold up. Because the interesting thing is, right, so he tasted the pod first and he thought, pleasant experience. Tasted the espresso. Also pleasant experience. But then he went back to the pod and then he began to change his mind a little bit.
The first time you try this, you're like, oh, it's quite bitter. The coffee sensation is definitely there. Then you taste the espresso. Instantly, you're like, okay, now you've got structure, you've got acidity, you've got all the notes. And then when you go back to the pod a second time to taste, it doesn't really taste like much.
Jools, so I've got this case somewhere. I don't know where it is. Oh, here it is. Should I just leave it here? Should I just rest the case here?
Just stop. We're not even halfway through this episode yet.
Sorry, Jools, so I just threw you under the bus, but I'm now going to rush to your defense. Because Nathan also said this.
But actually, they're both delicious. Like if I was to drink the pod all day long, I wouldn't have any problem with it, you know? If this was what I was being served at all times and I didn't know this espresso coffee existed, I can't say I would be annoyed or offended. It's just a very, very, very different taste.
Yeah, it's like because you don't know something better is in the world. I mean, at the end of the day, my issue from the start has been that the marketing of these pod machines suggests that you're getting an espresso experience in your kitchen. And he's quite clearly stated that is not the case.
Yeah, but Scott, the thing is, you're coming at it from your framework. Now, I'm looking at this from the perspective of somebody like, okay, Mama Vello. So you know that she likes her instant coffee. That's always been her thing. But then if she were to get a pod machine, that would be like a massive upgrade for her. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jools. A pod machine is a massive upgrade from instant coffee.
Yeah.
But as I go back to my original point, this is making itself out to be something even more than that. And it just quite simply isn't.
I don't know. I think we need to explore this a little bit more and then maybe expand, open your mind. So the next thing we wanted to look at is the question about pods being good value for money or not.
No, they're not. They're not. I've done the maths too. They're crap. So next.
Hold on, is your maths crap or would the maths for pods work out as crap? Because I'm sure very earlier on you said you're not that good at maths.
My maths is definitely crap. Anyway, we wanted to put all this to the test. So let me set this up for our dear listener. Jools and James very kindly schlepped out to the deepest, darkest parts of suburbia where I live. And we wanted to do this test. So we took a single pod, and this was the conversation we had. So one of the things which bugs me is I think that pod machines essentially, while the initial setup of buying the machine is relatively cheap, the ongoing costs are really expensive. And I want to demonstrate that by essentially finding out how much coffee per kilo is pod coffee versus loose bean coffee that I've been using.
Yeah.
So the only way to do that is to crack open that pod.
I'm going to do that in your kitchen. Do you have any tips or advice on the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Over there.
Yeah.
Do it over there.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Insightful. I've got my pod. I've got scales, the scissors. Okay, we're in. Oh, okay. We're at 6 grams?
6 grams.
Exactly 6 grams. So that's what you get in one of these pods.
Wow, Jools, 6 grams of coffee. Oh, that's amazing. How much does a pod cost in the supermarket?
Okay. I'm on the Espresso website. I'm having a look. And they range from 36p per pod to 55p per pod. So let's take an average of 40p.
Okay, so do the maths on that then. So how much is that? What, maybe per kilo or something?
No, I'm terrible at maths, Scott. You do it, seeing as you're so great at everything.
Let's give it to our dear producer, James, who is our maths whiz.
Yes.
Peeps, listen, it's 66 quid per kilo.
£66 per kilo of coffee. You can buy some crazy coffee for that. I mean, a kilo of specialty coffee you can get for like 25 quid, something like that, maybe.
Just hold on just a moment, Scott, because you're working this out on a kilo basis, all right? What about a per cup basis?
Okay. Yeah, no, fair.
So how much coffee do you use per latte?
I use 17.2 grams.
I love the specificness of your measurements. It could only
Actually,
be you.
it depends on how accurate my scales are. I do
boy.
like to be 17.258.
Okay, yeah. What do you pay per kilo then?
£35 for a kilo of specialty coffee. You'll get something pretty fantastic.
Okay, I can hear some number crunching going on in the background.
You don't have to number crunch, Jules. It's like 66 quid versus 35 quid.
No.
My kids know what that difference there is.
No. Producer man James has worked that out to be 60p per cup of coffee, right? It's 40p for an espresso pod. So that's like 50% more expensive per cup.
Yeah, but the problem there is, Jules, you're not really comparing like for like.
But this isn't an argument about the quality of the coffee, Scott. It's about getting a cup of coffee.
Yeah, but we're all about quality, Jules. We're all about the good stuff.
God. You know what? This could go on for a very, very long time. So why don't we just call this one a draw?
No, let's not call this a draw.
Just say yes. Just agree with Auntie Jools and let's move on.
Not going to agree with Auntie Jules on this one. Sorry, babes. Love you dearly, but no.
It's a no from me, dogs.
It's a no from me.
Okay, so dear listener, we have looked at the flavour and we have looked at cost as well. And it was a tie. Don't listen to anything else Scott says. But now, the thing that we needed to do was a speed test to find out which coffee was actually faster to make.
This bit's interesting. So we spent ages trying to get hold of a pod machine because I certainly wasn't going to go and buy one. And James, our producer, literally found one at the last minute and brought it to the test. Now, I think, Jules, you might have wished he hadn't bought this one, actually, hadn't he?
Yeah.
It's basically an old jute bag filled with what looks like junk. Yeah, I'm looking at it from the other end of the room. I don't even want to go near it, to be frank.
Such a snob. So I've got what I believe is possibly a tray of some kind.
That's been washed in years.
Yeah, need to give that a clean. Yeah, I definitely needed to give it a good clean.
It was pretty filthy.
It's going to be sparkling by the time you get it back as well, I promise.
Mate, I was at that sink for almost 5 minutes washing it up. This was not part of the plan for the day as far as I was aware.
Because that's what Auntie Julie does, you see. Makes things clean.
And then I actually had to put the whole thing together, and it took me about another 5 minutes to figure this out.
Right. Tray on the front.
So it comes to kind of like an espresso drag race. I'm already winning here because you had to spend 10 minutes cleaning and putting the thing together.
Unfair disadvantage was served to Jools on this.
Yay! Here we go. Right, so this is all coming together very nicely.
It still looks pretty filthy to me.
Shut up!
So, Jules, are you warmed up and ready to go? Ready for our drag race? And we've already taken 10 minutes, flapping around with this thing. Yeah, James, can we have some elevator music at this point?
Music, that's what we need.
3, 2, 1, go.
Right, I'm switching it on. Right, lifting up the thing. I press the left button.
Okay, stop. That was 45 seconds.
45 seconds to make a pod coffee.
Pretty speedy. But the thing is, most people don't buy into the sort of pod experience because they want to drink espresso. They want a milky drink. So with this machine that James pulled from a skip, he also had this... he also brought along this ribbed can. It attaches to the pod machine and apparently it froths the milk or something like that.
All right, count me in, sunshine.
Okay, right, you ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
And I'm going to press this button. Red lights come on. It's finished. Oh, that's frothed up really nicely, though. That looks really good.
And then, I lovingly attempted to pour you my best version of latte art.
Jules, that's lovely. Oh, that's definitely a beautiful splodge. So the milk frothing part took just over 2 minutes.
It was 45 seconds on the espresso part and 2 minutes on the Oatly part.
So then it was my turn.
So, Scott, are you ready to make the espresso component of your flat white in your lovely kitchen?
Yes, queen. Now, my kitchen, I've got a full proper setup. I've got a Sage Barista Pro.
Go.
Okay, so next I'm going to weigh out 17.2 grams. 17.3. I'm going to just take one bean out.
Wow, the precision is
Okay,
beautiful.
17.2. This is going into the niche grinder.
Okay.
7.
We're at 40 seconds.
Well, the beans are bouncing all over the place. Okay, they've stopped. Tamping. Looking all right. This might be a slow shot, this one.
Out of interest,
Yeah.
we've hit 2 minutes.
Okay. We're about to stop. You ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, stop. Okay.
Okay. 2 minutes and 6 seconds.
Okay, so Scott, you lost the espresso drag race. You lost it.
Yes. But coffee is a marathon, not a sprint.
Oh.
So, okay, best love heart.
We've still got the milk to go.
Go. 50 seconds.
There you go. Finished.
1 minute and 20 seconds.
So, Scott, you did beat me quite beautifully on the latte art. I will give you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you add up the timings, I think we're at almost a tie. I mean, it's pretty close, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So for me, my 2 minutes and 6 second espresso and 1 minute 20 second milk came out in total at 3.5 minutes in total. And yours came in at sort of like 2:45. So that's basically a tie, isn't it?
Oh, no. Hold on. Not so fast. I beat you there by a solid 45 seconds. And Scott, I could have beaten you by even more than that if I'd have pressed the frothing machine and the pod machine button at the same time. And in any case, as my espresso was being made, I didn't actually have to do anything, Scott. I could have just put my feet up, I'd just relax, and, you were there sweating away. Auntie Julie flexed on you when it came to the time.
True.
Sorry, say that again for the benefit of the tape and our dear listener.
Sorry.
Oh, have you just lost your
get
voice
some
at the
water.
point where you need to concede defeat to me on something?
No, you won. Fair and square, Jools. You beat me on the time. On pure convenience, pods win.
Right, thank you.
Okay, Jools. So we've got our final section here, which is where I'm going to just, destroy any argument you've got about pods. You're getting destroyed. But let's recap for the benefit of our dear listener. I beat you on flavour.
No, I'm not going to let you have that one. Really? Let's move on because I actually beat you on price, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's not actually technically true. But okay, let's move on.
All right. I'm pretty sure that I definitely beat you when it came to the convenience.
Slam dunk. Yep, you definitely beat me on convenience. I cannot argue with that. But now we're going to discuss the environmental impact of pods. I'm going to lay the case that pods are essentially destroying the earth. So, these things are so bad.
No. We need to back it up a little bit because it was far from cut and dry.
All right, maybe that was a bit strong. Let's let the listener decide what they believe.
So, in order to explore this topic in depth, we hopped onto the phone to this man.
I'm David Burrows, and I'm a journalist, and I specialise in writing about anything to do with sustainability that relates to food and drink, really.
And I suppose we should also just let the listener know that actually we've known each other for a number of years now, and you've written for Caffeine magazine on these kind of issues before.
Yeah.
And also Ends Report, Wicked Leaks, Just Food. And you also produce a monthly plastics package column for Food Service Footprint. And of course, you've also produced a number of reports on sustainable food systems. So, David, I wonder if you could do us a big favour, talk to our listener here about what are the different kinds of pods that we could find on our shelves.
Mainly they're what's called single-use pods, Scott. So you use them once and then you throw them away. And they can be made from a range of different materials, but the main ones are plastic, aluminium, a mixture of those two, which makes the recycling a bit more tricky, and then compostable. More lately, we've had you can even get reusable coffee pods as well.
So we know from hearing from David that there are different types of pods, right? We've got the plastic, aluminium single use, the compostable single use, and reusable. So in theory, pods can be recycled or composted and even reused. But what's the actual real environmental impact of each pod?
So look, let's take each one in turn and try and steer people to do the right thing for the environment.
Indeed. So let's take the most obviously bad pod for the environment, which is the plastic aluminium single-use pods. Now, they're not compostable. They're definitely not reusable because once you use it, you chuck it out.
Yeah, but where do you chuck it though? I mean, the thing is, if we put them into recycling, the chances are that they might end up in landfill anyway. It really depends.
It depends on what type of plastic they're made of. Depends whether our local authority will collect them. Depends whether they've got the systems to capture, the small size of pods. Depends whether we wash them out as well. Because what you don't want in your plastic recycling is the coffee grounds.
So look, long story short, dear listener, the thing is you need to do some research to understand what your pods are made of and whether the likelihood is that your council are going to be able to recycle them. There is a chance they can be recycled, but, there's just no guarantee.
So, Scott, imagine this. You've got one of these single-use pods, yeah, and then you realise that your local council won't actually recycle it. So we asked David, what's the best thing to do in that circumstance?
Then the best place to put it is just in your general waste.
So it's going to go to landfill?
In landfill or incineration, unless you join the new pod back scheme. You order the bag, you collect them up. There's a growing number of pod brands that are taken in that scheme. So again, the onus is on you to check whether the brand that you like and the coffee you like is collected by that scheme.
But the thing is, even here, with all of these pod back schemes that are out, it can actually get problematic.
But you look at these schemes and they are in their infancy. I mean, I think there's 200,000 households now that can have their pods collected in separate bags from the curbside. And that's fairly convenient. Whether it's sustainable in terms of emissions and you've got vans driving around collecting tiny little pods, I've yet to see an analysis of that, and I'd certainly like to see one. For the rest of the country, you have to order the bag, put all your pods in the bag, then take it to a collection site. Now that to me seems incredibly inconvenient for a machine that's designed to make your life more convenient.
So here you go. All of that aside, just for a moment, dear listener, imagine this. You've got your lovely Auntie Betty, one of these pod machines, right? What is the likelihood that Auntie Betty is going to recycle her pods and that they will get recycled? Now, David played a little game with us that was actually quite mind-blowing.
I'll give you a couple of recycling statistics, and then you have a guess at how many pods are recycled.
David, without being horrible, this sounds like the world's most boring game show. Oh, it is the recycling game show.
Try being my wife, Scott. We play these kind of games all the time.
But I do love this. Okay, so give us your first question.
So, what percentage of plastic bottles do you think are recycled in the UK?
Oh.
I'm going to go for 45%.
I was going to go 30. Oh.
59%.
Oh.
59% of plastic bottles. Plastic bottles is quite a success story. It's quite a success story.
Okay.
Pleasantly surprised.
How about all that flexible plastic, the films, the stuff that, is on sweet wrappers and on your bread and things like that?
I'm going to go quite low, and I'm going to go 20%.
Yeah, I'm going to go lower than that. I'm going 15.
7.
Wow.
7%.
That's terrible.
So that's a success story and a tricky issue. Where do you think pods comes in the equation?
You'd think there'd be in the 30 to 40% mark.
Because of the idea, this is what I was sold on,
that they were very easy to recycle, and I would have assumed that it would have been like 35% and above.
Now, one of the big companies involved in the pod back scheme we've been talking about said that it's been their mission for the past 10 years to ensure that every single pod that their customers enjoy will be recycled. I can't find anywhere, though, an accurate figure for the recycling rate of these pods. So I'm going to disappoint you by saying there isn't currently a figure. The only one I can find...
Damn you, Burrows.
There are two, and you'll like one of them, Scott. The first one is Nespresso says 32% of its pods are now recycled, which seems to me incredibly high. I'd love to see the workings and the detail behind that, to be honest. Now, the other figure that's been quoted quite a bit is one we used in the Caffeine article 4 years ago. And that was one of the experts we spoke to, one of the environmental consultants, said he thinks it was around 5% that are recycled.
You coming from this world, what is your, let's just say, best professional guess?
I don't think it's much higher than that film figure of 7%.
Wow.
And I'd love to be proved wrong. And there's a challenge to those that are running these schemes. Come and prove me wrong. Yeah. Show me the workings that say that it's well above 10% and should be, far above that. I mean, even a 50% recycling rate in this day and age is pretty terrible.
Okay, so the verdict on single-use pods is that, in theory, they are recyclable.
Absolutely, Jools. In theory, this is the theory. The reality, the real world, IRL, is very much different. And the reality is they're probably going to, like 90% of these are probably going to landfill.
Okay,
so I think that's a win for me, isn't it?
No, wait. Single-use pods that we were looking at just then, that's the worst case scenario, okay? So now we need to go over to the other types of pods that we'd mentioned before, compostable and reusable.
Right, so we're going to take compostables first. And I'm sorry, Jools, another hot mess.
If there are, compostable pods that are available, that sounds to me, David, that it is quite straightforward, that you could put this in your compost pile at home. What is actually the specific situation with compostable pods? Is it that straightforward?
It's not, unfortunately, Jools. And
David, you were brought onto this podcast to give us straight answers to straight questions. You are failing our listeners.
Surely it's my job as a journalist to create confusion most of the time.
I thought that was the job of politicians, but no, carry on, please, mate.
Compostables does seem like a silver bullet here. And there is an argument that they could offer some potential. And that's because of the coffee grounds that are stuck in that pod when you finish with it. If the pod is made from a material that's compostable, you could then put it in your food waste bin at home or on your home compost. The trouble is there are different types of compostable. Now, some of the pods are designed to be able for you to put them on your home compost, and they'll disappear over a certain amount of time, provided, and this is really key, Jools, provided you manage your compost heap very, very well. So you've got to be on it. Otherwise, you'll just have pods kicking around in there for a long time.
Yeah.
The other type of compostable is the industrially compostable material. Here, the problem is, you want that pod with the coffee grounds to end up in an industrial composter. Now, doing that is extremely tricky because there aren't many of them. And so what happens to most of our food waste, if you've got a little bin in your kitchen where you put your food waste and then you put it out and the local authority comes and collects it, what'll happen if you put your compostable pods with their grounds in that bin is generally it'll go to what's called an anaerobic digestion plant, where all that'll be broken down to create energy.
Right.
But before they can do that, what they'll do is scrape away all the packaging that's in there. And that can be everything from these little pods, which are compostable, but not great for those anaerobic digesters, right through to crazy things like toys. And I've seen children's dolls in some of these anaerobic digestion plants. So they're just clogging up the system, really. They don't really want them, so they'll be scraped out and sent to landfill or for incineration.
But how is the consumer supposed to tell the difference between the two types of compostable pods, if it's an industrial one or if it's a home one?
You can look out for a home compostable stamp on the packaging. As I say, that's done in lab conditions, so you have to really well manage your heap in order for that little pod to disappear. Then there's the industrially compostable material, and there you look out for a code which is EN13432. Yes. Exactly. Oh. So, I rest my case there. Yeah. If we've got to go into that amount of detail in order to get rid of our compostable pods, then we really are in trouble.
I'm going to say, Scott, in theory, it is possible to compost the pods. It can be done, so that there is a bit of a positive leeway here.
Oh, Jools, yeah. I mean, yes, it's that word theory.
Okay, let's now just turn our attention to what should be the most environmentally sustainable option: reusable pods. David, surely the best thing possible is just reusable, right? It has to be that, surely.
I think it could be. They're not a big part of the market at the moment. Again, it comes back to your convenience. Mm-hmm. You buy the machine for convenience. So adding a reusable pod makes it a bit more inconvenient. But in theory, yes, if we're using less of those single-use materials, then great.
I'm grabbing this and I'm running with this because this feels like a little bit of a victory for Jools here.
Jools, don't run away too fast because...
you pulling me back by the collar or something.
I've got you by the collar and you're doing that run you see in cartoons.
Yeah,
your
just
feet
the feet
are spinning and you're going nowhere. So hang on.
Go on
2
then,
seconds.
Scott.
These kind of pods, they're not designed for the consumer to refill them. They are tiny things. They are literally no bigger than a thimble. You've got to get exactly 6 grams of coffee into one of these things. You've got to grind it at exactly the right size. You then got to kind of cover these things with little seals. And this is for a system which is essentially meant to be quick and efficient. And so basically, by using reusable, which is great,
yes,
you're essentially negating every reason you ever bought this machine.
I can see where you're coming from with this, but I guess if you take that avenue to use reusable pods and you can do your part for the environment with it, and you're willing to do it as well, if you've got that in you, then why not? And I think about what we said at the very top of this episode. We've got aunties and uncles and cousins and various people that we might want to get Christmas gifts for or birthday gifts because it's getting to that time of year. And it's that whole thing of maybe I would be happy to speak to them about that, at least to impart that environmental knowledge and faith in them to be better with their pod machines that I'm going to give to them.
I hear you. I don't think it is our place to buy things for people that come with the baggage that they have to do X, Y, Z just to make that machine environmentally a little bit more sustainable.
No, you could apply that to so many things that you give to people as well. Like if I'm going to be awkward, like say for instance you give somebody,
please be awkward,
for
Jools.
instance a perfume gift set will have different types of plastic in it, for instance, and different types of card that it will come in. And you would like to think, perhaps, when the person gets rid of the box that they don't need, they are going to separate those bits of the box into the correct recycling. So everything comes with baggage.
That's not difficult, Jools, though, is it? It's like, that system is already in place. It's like you take the card, you put it in the recycling. You take the plastic, you put it in the recycling. What I'm not asking you to do is to take all of those things and then process them and then send them off to this place and put this on the curb at this particular time and wash this bit out. I'm just saying, look, take the card, put it in the recycling. Take the plastic, put it in the recycling. That's it. That ain't a job.
Okay, Scott, I'm going to agree with you that there are elements with pod machines that are a bit problematic, and it is a shame that the onus has been passed on to the consumer when it comes to, recycling and composting the pods. But there are a couple of things that you could do to try and move away from the issue. So first of all, do a bit of research and get a secondhand machine. So that's something that isn't going to go into landfill and it's going to get a second cycle of life, which is good. The other thing as well is that it's a gateway into tasting even better coffee. So there are roasters out there who are doing some incredible pods that you can get hold of with various coffees and flavors that you can try. Very simple, very easy and convenient to do in your kitchen. And you'll be able to help your friends or family on that journey into experiencing better coffee going forward.
If we can bring people from instant coffee into the wider world of specialty coffee where they're brewing up V60s and AeroPresses and espressos in their own home, I think there's a positive message to go from that.
So we have options.
Agreed. we have options. We always have options.
So, Scott, we've finished throwing our toys out of the pram, and it actually looks like we agree on a few points here. So maybe it's time to roll those credits?
Okay, let's just tell these lovely listeners about our Patreon. So if you would love to support the show, then please support us on Patreon. That is patreon.com/Adventures in Coffee.
Now, dear listener, we are developing Series 3 at the moment, and we are thinking hard about what topics we should be covering.
Should we interview celebrities about their coffee journey? Is that what you want to hear?
Do you want to actually hear more episodes about women in coffee?
Do you want more practical tips for brewing coffee in your kitchen, maybe?
Why don't you come and tell us on Patreon? We'll be sending little polls and surveys for you to complete, and we really would love to have your feedback on this, so please let us know.
Yes, and also if you live here in the UK, choose the caffeine dealer option and you can get like discounts from coffee here, maybe for your next kettle, an AeroPress, Mocha Masters, milk pitchers, loads of stuff. And there'll be more and more of those discount codes coming very, very soon.
You will find the links to Patreon in the show notes, so please come and join us. This podcast was produced by James Harper, the creator of the coffee podcast Filter Stories.
He also, tinkles the ivories in the background.
Oh, yes. If you like the show, you know what you need to do, and we'd love it if you would. Help others find it by leaving a really lovely review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps our show get picked up by the algorithm.
You can also follow Caffeine Magazine on Instagram. That's me, at Caffeine Mag. You can follow the lovely Jools at Lady Velo and James Harper at Filter Stories Podcast.
Right. In our next episode, we are going to be answering one of our most asked questions.
Yes, how to identify a good coffee shop. Now, I get asked this question all the time on Twitter and on Instagram. They say, tell me a really good coffee shop in Barrow-in-Furness. Tell me a great coffee shop in Exeter. And I just don't know. I haven't been to them all. I can't tell you. But what I can do is I can give you a framework of things to work it out for yourself.
Now, of course, with Scott being the self-proclaimed king of caffeine, he thinks he knows everything when it comes to this stuff. But we actually hit the streets of East London and put the King of Caffeine's framework to the test. Does he actually know everything? Is he going to get it all completely right? You'll have to come and join us next time and find out. So until then, take care, and we will speak to you soon.